The Psychology of Self-Sabotage. Why your mind works against your success. Chapter 1. A note before we begin. You picked up this book or pressed play on this audio because something inside you already knows. You know you are capable of more. You know there have been moments, maybe many of them, where you had everything in place. The plan, the talent, the opportunity, the sheer desire. And then somehow you got in your own way. Maybe you went quiet right before your big moment. Maybe you sabotaged a relationship that was actually working. Maybe you started 100 things and finished none of them. Maybe you let fear dress itself up as wisdom and talked yourself out of the very thing you wanted most. If any of that sounds familiar, you are not broken. You are not weak. You are not uniquely flawed. You are human. But here is the truth that changes everything. The behaviors holding you back are not random. They are not personality defects. They are not destiny. They are patterns, and patterns can be understood. And everything that can be understood can be changed. That is what this book is about. Not motivation, not hype, not a list of things to do differently on Monday morning. This book is about going beneath the surface, into the architecture of the mind itself, to understand why we undermine our own success and, more importantly, how we stop. Over the chapters ahead, we will examine the hidden logic behind your most frustrating behaviors. We will look at why perfectionism is not a high standard, but a hiding place. Why procrastination is not laziness, but fear in a lab coat. Why the comfort zone does not feel like a trap, it feels like home. And we will build something real, a new relationship with yourself. One where the part of you that once worked against you begins, step by step, to work for you. This is not a passive read. Whether you are holding this book in your hands or listening to these words on your commute, in the gym, in the quiet of the morning, I want you to be present. Because the concepts ahead are going to ask things of you. They are going to ask you to be honest, to look at yourself without flinching, to stop performing wellness and start doing the work. The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. Joseph Campbell. Let's go find what's been waiting for you inside. Chapter 1. The Invisible Enemy. We have met the enemy, and he is us. Walt Kelly, Pogo, 1970. Picture this. It's 11:47 p.m. You have an important presentation tomorrow, one you've been preparing for weeks. You know the material. You've rehearsed. You're ready. But instead of sleeping, you're doing something else entirely. Maybe you're scrolling through your phone, watching videos you don't even care about, or reorganizing your desk for the third time this week. Your body is exhausted. Your mind knows exactly what it's doing, and yet you can't stop. By the time you finally sleep, it's past 2 a.m. Tomorrow you will be tired, foggy, and underperforming, and some quiet part of you will not be entirely surprised. That is self-sabotage. Not dramatic, not obvious. Not the villain twirling a moustache in a movie. Just a quiet, almost invisible pattern that chips away at everything you are trying to build. And here is what makes it truly insidious. You are the one doing it. The enemy you cannot see. The word sabotage comes from the French word saboter, which in one historical account described workers throwing their wooden shoes, sabots, into machinery to grind production to a halt. It was an act of disruption from within the system. That is exactly what we are talking about. Not an external obstacle, not bad luck, not the economy, your upbringing, your boss, or the timing. The sabotage that costs us the most is the kind we do to ourselves, and it is happening inside the very system that is supposed to be working for us. The painful irony is that self-sabotage is often invisible to the person doing it. We do not experience ourselves as the problem. We experience the consequences, the missed deadlines, the broken relationships, the unfinished goals, the life that keeps almost working. And we look everywhere for an explanation except the mirror. Here is a hard question worth sitting with. How many times have you had everything you needed to succeed and still found a way to undermine it? The numbers don't lie. We tend to think of self-sabotage as something that happens to other people. The chronically disorganized friend, the colleague who always blows up their own success. But the research tells a very different story. A landmark study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that self-handicapping, a classic form of self-sabotage where people deliberately create obstacles before important events, is remarkably common across all demographics, not just among those with low confidence or poor mental health. According to data from the American Psychological Association, approximately 70% of people experience what is known as imposter syndrome at some point in their lives. That nagging internal voice insisting that your success is a fluke and that you will eventually be exposed as a fraud. For many, this manifests not as visible anxiety, but as quiet, systematic self-undermining. Avoiding challenges, deflecting compliments, preemptively lowering expectations to avoid the pain of disappointment. A 2023 survey by workplace research firm Gallup found that only 23% of employees worldwide feel truly engaged in their work, meaning that nearly 8 in 10 people are, to varying degrees, disconnecting from their own potential on a daily basis. Not because of bad bosses or poor working conditions alone, but because of internal barriers that rarely get named or addressed. Self-sabotage is not a niche problem. It is arguably the most widespread barrier to human potential on the planet, and it is almost entirely invisible. Meet Marcus. Marcus was 34 when he first came to terms with what he had been doing to himself. On paper, Marcus had everything going for him. He was sharp, likable, and genuinely talented in his field of product design. He had been offered 2 significant promotions in 3 years and turned both down, citing timing, readiness, not feeling quite ready. He told himself he was being strategic, patient, realistic. He also started his own freelance side business twice and abandoned it both times just as momentum was building. He was in 2 serious relationships that he had ended, both times right around the point where things got serious, where the other person started making real long-term plans. When Marcus finally sat down with a therapist, not because of any crisis, but because of a creeping, exhausting sense that his life was on a loop, the therapist asked him one simple question. What is the common denominator in every situation where things fell apart? Marcus sat with that for a long moment. Then quietly he said, "Me." That moment of recognition, uncomfortable, almost embarrassing, was the beginning of everything changing for Marcus. Not because admitting the problem fixed it, but because you cannot dismantle an enemy you refuse to acknowledge. The shape of self-sabotage. Self-sabotage does not always look dramatic. It rarely announces itself. It wears many disguises, and some of them look remarkably like wisdom. It looks like perfectionism, spending so long making something perfect that you never actually launch it. It looks like procrastination, putting off the important task in favor of the urgent one, then in favor of nothing at all. It looks like self-medication, reaching for food, alcohol, screens, or substances when the discomfort of growth becomes too much. It looks like self-deprecation in the presence of opportunity, like making yourself small right before you are called to be large. like picking a fight with your partner the night before your biggest presentation, like choosing the safe, familiar option, not because it is better, but because it is known. Dr. Judy Ho, clinical psychologist and author of Stop Self-Sabotage, identifies several core patterns that run through virtually every form of self-undermining behavior. A fear of failure, a fear of success, a deeply held negative belief about one's own worth, and a habit of seeking familiar discomfort over unfamiliar growth. These are not character flaws, they are adaptive strategies, built by a younger version of you who was trying to survive in an uncertain world. The problem? That younger version of you wrote the code, and you are still running it. Why smart people fall hardest? Here is something that might surprise you. Self-sabotage does not discriminate by intelligence. In fact, research suggests that high-achieving, analytical people are among its most vulnerable targets. Why? Because intelligent people are better at rationalizing. When fear wants to stop you from doing something, it does not always say, "I'm afraid." It says, "This isn't the right time. The market isn't ready. I need to prepare more. I should do more research first." And if you are smart, those arguments are convincing, airtight even. You can build a whole philosophy around not doing the thing you fear. You can make it sound not like cowardice, but like strategy. This is what we will come to call fear disguised as logic, and we will spend an entire chapter dismantling it. For now, just know this: the strength of your reason for not doing something is not necessarily evidence that the reason is true. Sometimes it is just evidence that your fear is creative. You are not the villain of this story. Before we go any further, I want to establish something important, because it will be the foundation of everything that follows. Self-sabotage is not proof that you are weak, broken, or beyond help. It is not a character verdict. It is not destiny. It is a response, a learned, often deeply unconscious response, built over years, sometimes over a lifetime, to experiences that taught you certain lessons about safety, worthiness, and what happens when you want too much. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. Jung was not being poetic. He was describing, with surgical precision, exactly what happens to the vast majority of people who go through life never examining the patterns driving their choices. The behaviors that are sabotaging your success right now are not random. They are logical, from a certain point of view. They are your nervous system doing what it was trained to do: protect you from pain, from exposure, from rejection, from the terrifying vulnerability of actually trying and failing, or worse, actually trying and succeeding, and then having to sustain it. That is why this book does not ask you to just try harder or believe in yourself more. Those instructions have never worked for anyone long term because they do not address the root. We are going to the root. How to use this book and this audio. Whether you are reading these pages or listening to this on audio, I want you to treat this as an active experience, not a passive one. The ideas we will cover are not difficult to understand, but understanding is only the first step. What will change your life is application. As you move through each chapter, ask yourself, where do I see this in my own behavior? Not in a self-punishing way, not with shame or frustration, with the calm, curious eye of a scientist studying an interesting phenomenon. Because that is what you are doing. You are studying yourself. And the goal is not judgment. The goal is clarity. In the chapters ahead, we are going to map the full territory of self-sabotage. But first, we need to answer one foundational question. Why does your mind work against you in the first place? The answer is going to surprise you, because it is not about weakness, it is not about fear, it is not even about failure. It is about protection. Your self-sabotage is not a glitch. It is a feature, one your mind installed at some point for very good reasons. Understanding that changes everything. Coming up in Chapter 2, everything you have read in this chapter points to one uncomfortable, liberating truth. The enemy is not out there. The patterns sabotaging your life were built inside you, and they were built for a reason. In Chapter 2, we are going to go straight to the heart of it. What if your self-sabotage is not a malfunction, but a misguided act of self-preservation? Because once you understand that self-sabotage is, at its root, self-protection, the entire conversation changes. You stop fighting yourself. You stop trying to override your patterns with willpower, and you start doing something far more effective. You start understanding them. Chapter 2, Self-Sabotage is Self-Protection, is next.